So, good evening, everybody. Whether you're here with us in the Trinity Hall Lecture Theatre or the dozens and dozens joining us online, you're extremely welcome to this Spotlight event, Spotlight on AI. We are streaming the event, we are recording the event, and it will therefore be available for viewing afterwards. So, AI. Something I think we're all talking about without, certainly in my case, always knowing exactly what I mean. And I'm certainly not sure that we all together mean the same thing when we use the words. It's a very exciting topic. It's a topic that provokes anxiety. There's talk of existential threats to humanity at one end, and then at the other end, people just talking about really useful tools that can make you more efficient. There are questions of resource use, of regulation, of power and control, as well as practical questions about skills and jobs. And our series of events across the year will aim to tackle different perspectives on AI, this huge topic. So this evening is all about AI and business. How is AI being adopted? What do businesses actually mean when they talk about using AI? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? What does it mean for the shape of the workplace and job opportunities for our students in a changing world of work? So I'm really delighted this evening to be joined by a panel of 3 alumni who will share their perspectives in turn. We have Matt McNeany, who's president of WPP Open Pro, the new edition of WPP Open AI platform for marketing. He leads the team empowering brands to independently plan, create and publish campaigns, leveraging WPP's advanced AI and technology. Dr. Brian Healy is CEO of Decision Science, a leading data science and quantitative finance consultancy, and of Dragovan Healy Alpha Research and Development, a quantitative hedge fund. He's a serial entrepreneur and a strategic advisor, and he's founded and guided numerous startups in the fintech and AI space. Isobel Daley leads the AI practice at a specialist data consultancy, helping organisations apply machine learning and generative AI in a responsible way. And she also researches gender bias in generative AI and advocates for greater diversity in technology leadership. So we'll hear from each of our 3 speakers in turn, and then we'll have a chance to discuss the issues raised and ask questions. In the lecture theatre, we'll have microphones for the questions. If you're online, we'll ask you to use the live chat function on your screens to submit questions. So have a think about what you'd like to ask as we go along, and I'll explain the practicalities again later when we get there. But first and for now, it really is my pleasure to welcome Matt to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mary. Thank you, everybody, for turning out. It's deeply intimidating to stand here and try and talk about AI. The imposter syndrome is large. Let me tell you on that. So, as Mary said, I work for WPP. WPP is a big advertising agency. I kind of stumbled into advertising not long after I left here, over 30 years ago, which is slightly depressing. So it means that I've seen a lot in the career. So, you know, I started in a pre-internet age. We've been through that. We've been through .com boom, the smartphones, mobiles, and social media, and so on. None of it compares to the level of impact that we're seeing from AI change. It's absolutely a transformational shift. And as I think Mary alluded to, you get kind of equal measures of anxiety and excitement about, what it means. I absolutely tend to the excitement and optimistic end of it, which is, I guess, why I'm here, and I'll try and substantiate why that is the case, and see if we can make this point about, for the younger people here, there's a generation AI which we should be leaning into and be excited about. So to kind of look at, if the exam question is, how is AI transforming business, let's do a kind of from to of how we used to do it, and look at how we're starting to do it now. So this is a massive simplification of how we do advertising. Actually, possibly not that too much of a simplification. Clients come to us. So I work in advertising agencies. You've got brands, agencies, media in the advertising world. So I work for the agencies. Clients come to us with a challenge. So they want to launch something, sell more things. The first thing is we have groups of people called strategists or planner who do the analysis. So they look at the market, they look at competitors, they look at past performance, they look at a bunch of data and cultural trends and so on, write a strategy, write a brief for how that brand, how we create value for that brand, and hand it to the creatives of the Don Draper-esque people who largely ignore the brief, come up with whatever they want to anyway, sell the idea to the client, and then we go in, we do the production, we make the ad. In the good old days, we'd all head off to South Africa and shoot something, it'd be a lot of fun. The budgets don't support that anymore, so we come up with we make the concept, we do the film shoot. I'm going to go towards Gen AI at some point or other. So we write the copy, and then the real work starts. The slightly less glamorous thing is, and once we've got that ad, it needs to be adapted. It needs to work across lots of different media formats. So it needs to work on TV and on YouTube and on TikTok and on Instagram and on out of home and on print, even in some places. So we have to version it, and we have to adapt it for local markets. We tend to work with a lot of global clients, so that ad's got to run in 100 different markets across 20 different channels, and we try and personalize it to different audiences. A lot of stuff happens downstream, and we get it into media, and I'm going to skip on media because that's a whole other section in its own right. So then that's a process that will take, best case weeks, normally months, sometimes years, depending on what it is that we're doing. Lots of specialist teams performing specialist functions in manual processes, and that's the process. That's how the sausage gets made in advertising. Also, it was. So this is kind of what we're doing now. So I'm going to show you a video of a platform called WPP Open Pro. Bit of an ad, but you asked an ad man to talk about it. So this is what I do. This is what my team does, and this is an AI platform for marketing that we use. Actually, most of the point our clients use. We give it to our clients for them to do their advertising and marketing, and we're going to look at it from the point of view of a fictitious biscuit brand called Biscolo. So if we kind of jump in, and you're the planners. So your first job is you've got to generate insights on what's happening in the biscuit market. So instead of the research, you talk to the agents do this work for you. So these are the work of AI agents looking at audience, competition, trends, what's happening in the market. Your job is to launch it in France. So you type Biscolo France and say, tell me everything that's happening in the biscuit market in France. It goes off and looks at data that we might have, public data, client data, partner data, and builds this kind of Pinterest type experience. It literally takes about a minute in real time. Tells us an opportunity with the senior market. You go, that's cool, but because it's an agent, you can interact with it. You go, so write me a strategy for reaching French seniors in the market, and it will write you the strategy. It will write you the prompt. So very quickly, you can go through this process of understanding opportunity and building it out. Then you need to jump into creative. So we've skipped a bit. We've got some creative work. We're running a campaign across various social media formats. Here we want to sort of swap the content out. So we want to change one image for another. So we don't need to do the shoots. We can just version it. And if we want to change it to be a Valentine's Day promotion, you say, give me this image that's suitable to Valentine's. We've got this sort of slightly wacky brand. It will generate new content for you in seconds. You ask it to write me a headline in the tone of voice of this brand, in the idiom of it, and it will give you a suitable or slightly suitable headline. You can then take it into your social media posts and so on, and because we're doing it in France, you can go, okay, translate this into French for me, make this work for the French market. So all those hours I spent translating Montaigne from France into English were utterly wasted because I can just throw a prompt into the AI and it does it. It wasn't wasted. I mean, possibly it was. So we will do that, and it will get it in the idiom of this. So anyone who speaks French, you can tell me whether it gets the tonality right. It's pretty good at it, basically. So this is, the kind of new process for. Actually, I'm speaking faster than the demo's going. So this is the process or one of the ways in which we're transforming the advertising market. And then voila, gastronomie, bof, bonne collation. So if we go, so it's done pretty much everything that's in that process, but instead of taking weeks or months, it's taking days or hours. And so there's a huge transformation there in terms of the efficiency of how we're able to work, but also whereas we as advertising groups, let's talk about how it affects the business, where we're spending our time. So we still need people to run that process and to train those people, but we are investing hundreds of millions of in what sits underneath. So aggregating our data sources together, because data gives us the differentiation. I suspect others will talk about that more. Building AI, writing our own AI, but critically building partnerships with the AI model providers so we can get access to Google models before anybody else does, and then building those into agentic platforms like the one you've just seen to help our people and help our clients. And that is how advertising is being done these days. The impact of that is significant. So if you look at it from an economic point of view, typically we sell time. We're a professional services business like the lawyers and the accountants. So if people like me are taking a process that would have taken weeks and taking it down to hours, there isn't as much time to sell. It's not good for the economic model, but it also is just happening. You can't resist against it. So we have to shift our monetization models from time into outputs and outcomes. It means we're changing the way we deliver services to clients. It's the Uberification of advertising, if you like. So it was fun when we got the lunches and the trips to South Africa. It's just not there anymore. So, but in addition to the people, there's still a human in the loop, and I don't want to diminish that, but delivering the service through software is key, and all of that is having an effect on staffing, and that can feel a bit grim. So these are a couple of things from the last 2 weeks. Campaign, the journal, run by, if you anyone see on the right, former editor of Vast, who's now the editor of Campaign. So that's where you can end up. So the IPA, which is the Institute for Practitioners in Advertising, reported like a 14% decrease in headcount year on year from last year to this year. Omnicom, who I used to work for, who are the biggest, announced last week that they were going to cut $1.5 billion from their labour costs. So that's a lot of jobs that are going. Sadly, of course, it's the entry-level jobs because the agents are as good as the entry people. And honestly, but it's also affecting the middle layers as well. So the strategy agents that we use are not as good as our best strategists and planners, but they are as good and as better than most of the people in this room for it, and they can work very quickly. So it can feel like a bit of a doom cycle on occasions. But I said, I started this talking about optimism, and I'll try and justify that through the visual metaphor of a hedgehog in superpower outfits, which seemed like a good idea when I was trying to come up with it. But the reason I'm optimistic is a couple of things. So first of all, any tech change we've had in history has led to economic growth and improvement in living standards. So there is no reason why AI should be different to that. And I think even more so that AI's superpower is it gives people superpowers and it overcomes constraint. And that is the big thing it does. And in business, we are all constrained. We're constrained. We don't have the budget. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources. We don't have the skills to do all the things that we wanted to be able to do that would make our business grow. But now we do. AI can do that. AI can make you a coder. It can make you, you can do creative. You can do things that you couldn't do before, which is an engine for economic growth. So as you look a bit further downstream, the three phases of AI model that we see, we're very much in the first phase of the streamlining, do what we've done before, but automate it, and that has an impact on how we work and some jobs. But in the process of doing that, we're empowering people, smaller teams, to be able to do more, which is an expansionist driver. So more businesses can do more things. It's why we built a self-serve platform inside an agency to power teams to do that. It's particularly useful for small and mid-sized businesses, which I think will be a key part of the economic future of the country. And the really interesting bit is the last bit, is because the first two are still about the way we work now. The last bit is the AI is creating new patterns and new ways of working. Soon we will all have an AI agent, a personal agent on our phone, which will then talk to brand agents. And so there are new questions about business that are hard to answer, and those are tomorrow's jobs that we will create with the people who are going to do those pieces of work. And I will finish on this point is the skills that are important in there. So we're going to hear from Peter, and there's a lot of people in this room who are much better qualified than I am to talk about AI. But I think the undervalued skill in AI is critical thinking. So AI is very good at coming up with answers. It's increasingly good at executing, at doing data science, at writing code. But it's the people who can bring critical thinking and ways of reframing the problem and looking at it from a different angle, and those skills that you get as a flaky, unemployable arts and social science graduate. If you can combine that with the ability to code the AI, those are what business is looking for. So the people who are looking to be in generation AI, get stuck in, basically build agents, take the learning you've got here from studying Kant, and think about how you apply that into different problems and different solutions. And that is my grounds for optimism.
Mary, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. Good to see you all. Before I begin, I just want to say I hope you enjoyed that last presentation, because mine does not contain any videos, any French, any no hedgehog either, actually, no. So I feel a bit aggrieved being placed after the advertising guy. So I, as Mary said earlier, I work in financial services primarily, but basically I build AI. I'm a mathematician. I did maths here nearly 30 years ago as well. Scary. And since then I've worked as really anything from sort of data science or quantitative analyst, everything in and around math, stats, data science, computer science, etc. A lot of it for finance, banking, financial markets, fintech, but not exclusively. So I've worked with a lot of startups in different areas, and I just want to explain why your IT department is possibly currently panicking. So what's the big picture for AI in the UK? Keep calm and automate on. It's got one, and I actually agree with Matt. I'm actually an optimist as well. So again, thanks for stealing my thunder on that one. I was assuming I'd be the only optimist in the room, but I think it's good. 70% allegedly of workers, of UK workers, do jobs AI could help. I mean, that's no surprise. I mean, I think it's probably higher than that, to be honest. I think AI can help with nearly anything, both professionally and personally, and all the rest. 232 billion potential GDP boost by 2030. I have absolutely no idea if that number makes any sense whatsoever. And AI actually found this, so I got the AI to do this bit of the presentation. I thought it was quite useful. It's not unreasonable, I guess, if we believe that. It's a big number, right? So AI is going to have a big effect, is really all this is saying. And if we completely mess this up, 8 million jobs could be at risk. Again, is that the right number? Who knows, right? It's, again, a lot of jobs will be affected, a lot of people will be affected, we will all be affected. The UK service economy is much more at risk in many respects than the manufacturing side. And UK is very exposed to service. It's a much bigger service economy than a lot of other developed nations. So that kind of creates a slightly bigger exposure, I guess, to these changes for the UK, both good and bad. So what is it good for? I guess is one question that I have been asked. More tea breaks is my answer, right? So I think AI is going to allow me, hopefully, and you too, to put your feet up and enjoy life. For writing, just in general writing, and this I use it all the time, by the way, for like scientific writing mathematical formulae, etc. It's fantastic. 59% faster. Again, AI came up with these numbers, so believe of them what you will. Coding, 56% faster. I use it all the time. It makes my life a lot easier. It finds bugs that I didn't know were there. It finds bugs that are not even there sometimes. IT support, no idea. 44% faster. Again, it's no doubt that any job which involves a sort of a support element, it will have a transformational effect on it. The ability to respond faster and more accurately to requests. Legal work is very sensitive, obviously, in Trinity Hall. 34% faster. Now, I do know that the legal profession is one of those that is held up as being one that is particularly susceptible to the effect of AI. I don't necessarily believe it's more, going to be more effective than a lot of other professions. I think all service professions will be dramatically affected. I do think the ability to research and to ferret out information and documents and join things together is a real skill that it has, and will certainly speed things up a lot and help in that regard. But I just think it's an enabler. I don't necessarily see it as something that's going to replace a lot of labor. So is there anything else then? Is there anything else that's good at, other than the ability to kick back and let AI do all the work? Well, money, of course, is a big factor in anything like this. So we have this large growth potential, 10.3% apparently, due to the news recently. 66% of firms already seeing gains of some sort. Now again, that could be from a lot of this is obviously anecdotal, survey-based. It's very difficult to actually quantify a lot of these things. One thing that actually strikes me as very, very interesting is that since LLMs have been really prevalent in the last 3-4 years, been widely used, we haven't actually seen a big uptick in the number of apps being created, like things like the App Store. We haven't seen a big uptick in the number of the GitHub where code is stored. There hasn't actually been this, exponential or even linear, pickup in growth in companies being formed in these spheres that you would expect perhaps at this stage. But nonetheless, there's a lot of automation gains. There's a lot of people doing things faster. There's a lot of infrastructure spend. We know all about this, right? People talk about this all the time. And this applies to the UK as well. So infrastructure of all sorts is going to generate a lot of revenue. And we have these 5 AI growth zones across the UK. So who's winning? Financial services, they always tend to, don't they? They've adopted, again, being my own kind of domain, I guess I kind of know more about it than others, and it is widely used for fraud detection, for loan approval, you name it. It's been around for a long time. Different versions of machine learning is the more traditional name for these types of AI, and it's just really statistics on steroids is the way I would describe it. They're detecting fraud faster than you can say scam likely. So there have been really dramatic improvements in this area. It's hard to imagine, from the beginning of my career, how many false positives and flags, things that were flagged that now wouldn't be, and so on. It's made life a lot easier. Marketing is another one. So it's been widely used for generating content, for marketing campaigns of all sorts. And a lot of the social posts are nearly right themselves. So it's been transformational in marketing. So here's your AI strategy, which doesn't appear to be working very well in this case. But what's the problem? There's a skills black hole, I think, is probably the biggest one I would identify, where I'd say all firms have skills gaps. So I think everyone is concerned about what they will need to know, what they don't know, what they don't know, and so on. And there's a lot of nervousness around this, and for good reason, because I think there is a lot that needs to be learned in order to really get the most out of this. Workers need upskilling. And only 13% of grad schemes allegedly include AI training. Now, I teach at a couple of universities, and I can certainly say that universities have not been very good in this area. They're just panicking about students cheating on exams, which is an issue, but it's not the only issue. I think students need to learn to use these tools rather than universities just running around like headless chickens panicking. Is there anything else to worry about? So the robot uprising, of course, is a major concern. How likely is that? Well, I'm not particularly concerned about it, to be honest. But there is, if we don't do things properly, there are absolutely risks. So behind door number 1, there's lots of jobs at risk if we get this completely wrong and don't manage this correctly. Door number 2. We potentially have no job losses. In fact, job gains, as was mentioned earlier. All previous. I remember dating myself. I remember when Excel and PCs in the 90s came in. Everyone thought, this is the end of the world. There's going to be nobody working in offices, and now it's everybody in the city is using Excel, and there's a lot more of them. So I don't necessarily. There's a lot that needs to be done regulation-wise, and a lot that needs to change. But I think the potential is phenomenal. So there's one slide wrinkle, which I think is a lot of people, if not everybody, doesn't fully trust the machines. 80% of business cite ethical concerns. Now, I think this is made up. I think what they really mean is 80% of businesses are not really sure what they're doing in this space, so they say, oh, it's ethical. I think there's a bit of virtue signaling going on here. But nonetheless, there are obviously, undoubtedly, ethical issues, lots of issues with AI. Only 20% of UK adults see AI as an opportunity, which I think is amazing. And 67% think humans should be kept in the loop to check AI's work, which in many, many domains is probably right. 87% say responsible AI will be the key differentiator. I've got a link to all the above. I think that's right. I think there is very much an argument to be made that that is essential. So, in summary, where does that leave us? We should try to start small and learn as fast as possible. Use government training, and government definitely have a role to play here, as well as the universities and other sectors. Early movers will capture disproportionate gains, but that does not mean that there's not gains still left on the table. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be building your own LLMs. You don't have to be the most technical. There's still a lot to be gained here. There is a compounding disadvantage for laggards. So I do think firms, particularly medium to large size firms, if they're not already, need to be aware of what this can do for them, what their competitors are doing, and the potential risks as well. So I think the future is here to a large degree. It's just not evenly distributed, and very unevenly distributed, I would say. And that's even within the UK, not just globally. And that's something that we all need to address, I think.
So, hi everyone. It's really great to be back here at Trinity Hall speaking on AI. And before I dive into my kind of reflections on AI and how it's used in business and how I use it within the work that I do, a very quick introduction to myself. So, Isobel Daley, I came up to study economics at Trinity Hall in 2007, which isn't quite 30 years ago, but is almost 20 years ago, and equally I find very alarming. And at that time, I had absolutely no idea I would end up pursuing a career in either data science or latterly AI. Data science wasn't really a thing at all. And I think as a consequence of that, I then, upon leaving university, spent several years doing various different things, both in consulting and also in running small businesses in niche industries like agricultural laboratories and manufacturers of meteorological instrumentation, before I had an epiphany and retrained as a data scientist. That was about 8 years ago. And after that, I ended up joining a small tech consultancy as the first data scientist. And we rapidly grew. That data science and AI practice rapidly grew, and we were eventually acquired by Accenture. And after leaving Accenture 7 or 8 months ago, I now run the AI practice at a boutique data and AI consultancy called Dufresne, where we work with organisations, particularly in the financial services and insurance industries, to embed AI into the way that they work. And yeah, I love being hands-on and technical. That's really where my passion is. And outside of work, I've got 2 young daughters who I've heard, aged 3 and 5, might be watching this on the streaming. So hopefully they'll get some interesting insights. But as a result, I think a lot about what the world is going to be like for them as they grow up, as it's going to be a very, very different place to be. And for me, AI isn't an abstract concept at all. It's something I use every single day in the way that I work, and something I work every single day with organisations to help embed into their core operations. So, leading the AI practice for a consultancy has 2 dimensions. So the first is how I use AI to change how my team and people across the company work. And the second is about working with lots of different organisations who are at different stages of their AI journey to embed AI into their operations. And currently, I think this covers 4 main areas. The first, which I think lots of you will be familiar with and are likely to already be kind of using a lot yourselves, is for personal productivity. So, all the things around being able to research something much more rapidly, being able to use AI meeting summaries, being able to generate content very quickly. That's something that is absolutely part of my everyday, and I now can't really imagine a world without it. The second area, which is really key, particularly to my team, is how we use AI to build systems faster. So we're able to use things like coding co-pilots in order to massively accelerate prototyping and accelerate the development of AI systems that we can then bring to organisations. The third, which is something we work a lot with clients on at the moment, is around automating processes. So that a very good example of that is doing things like extracting information from unstructured data, so emails, PDFs, Word documents, etc., and then organising that and into a structured way and being able to then populate systems. And you can imagine those are the sorts of tasks where previously you might have had people having to pore through documents and then extract something and type onto a system. That's where suddenly we're able to massively reduce the administrative burden and enable the people that were doing that to actually focus on on things where human connection matters and where humans can really bring value. And the fourth area is in creating new tools and products, so things like customer service agents, recommendation agents, and all sorts of other things. So I'd say these are the changes we're seeing right now, but AI's role is expected to evolve very quickly in organisations, and I thought it might also be good to think about what the next few years might look like for AI. And what's on the screen now is actually from Microsoft, a Microsoft report from last year, which considers the evolution of organisations from sort of on their AI journey. And starting at the first box, which I would say is where most organisations are at the moment, is that world where we're using AI as a tool. So very human-driven, using tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot in order to help you produce better quality work, but very much driven by the human. Some organisations are now starting to move into the next phase, which is where AI becomes a bit more of a teammate. So they might have an AI agent who joins their team. It's integrated with their technology ecosystem, and those AI agents can take on specific tasks under kind of human direction, but enabling the team to achieve more, but with human oversight and those tasks being fairly narrowly defined. What is expected, and I would say I'm yet to be convinced that any or many organisations have moved into this final box, but I think it will come, is where AI becomes more of a proactive partner. So that's where humans set a much more general direction, and then AI agents can then work out, okay, what do I need to do in order to achieve this goal, and go and execute the actions required with humans checking in as required. I suspect that we will see rapid movement across this kind of path over the next couple of years. I think things are really picking up pace. So I think many organisations will get to that point of AI being a proactive partner within a few years. But getting to that future state isn't necessarily simple at the enterprise level. Even today, like moving from experimentation to production AI is much harder than it looks. And so that's a challenge that I thought would be good to talk about. So what I mean when I say productionizing an AI system, it's actually reliably embedding that into an organisation, embedding it into operational workflows, making sure it's used by real users, that it's influencing real decisions at scale, and most importantly, that it's reliable and safe. And building a proof of concept, which shows that this could work, from a technical point of view, is pretty easy. You can prove it works in a demonstration environment, but it might use not real data or very limited data, and importantly, it actually doesn't have any real consequences. Taking that to production is a whole different kettle of fish. That's why you need to integrate it into the enterprise systems. You need to integrate it with real data. And at that point, the risk suddenly becomes very real. and that's where really robust monitoring and evaluation is required. There needs to be strict AI governance in place, and importantly, there needs to be accountability. Humans need to take responsibility for the system that's being put in place. And that is where, at the moment, I think a lot of organisations are getting stuck, but I anticipate over the next 12 months or so, we're going to see lots more organisations kind of break through that barrier, establish that proof of concept to production pathway, and we're going to see much broader AI transformation. And alongside those technical challenges that we have, we also need to address the ethical ones. And there are several ethical ones to address, but one that's particularly close to my heart, so I thought I would bring up tonight, is the fact that the data used to train most AI models is completely biased. Often AI development teams lack diversity, and that means that when these solutions are developed, often certain groups are overlooked, and that means the system that's developed doesn't work for everyone. And ultimately, the outputs and the design of AI systems then reflect that. And I think that's a really significant structural risk that we need to take seriously. We need to make sure we're designing AI systems that are going to work for all of society and not get to a point where we're actually creating structural problems in society because we haven't properly looked at this. So, all that being said, I'm also an optimist, and I think there is a lot to be excited about in the age of AI. We absolutely must take those risks seriously, and there are lots, I could talk about lots more. And we also need to consider the impact of lost skills and the impact on jobs. But we should also remember, as has been said previously this evening, technological disruption often brings profound long-term benefits. If we look at the mechanisation of textiles, kind of at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, there was obviously a lot of unrest around the impact of that technology. There were lots of skills, things like hand spinning, weaving, but we gained so much from it. We gained the rise of mass manufacturing. Suddenly society had access to cheaper goods, and entirely new industries were spawned. Same with the printing press. We lost skills, we lost scribes, but it also spawned an explosion in literacy. There was a huge spread of, massive spread of ideas, and it triggered a scientific revolution. And my third example was photography, where we suddenly reduced demand for portrait painters, and I'm sure lost lots of skills, but we also enabled mass documentation of people and events, and the democratization of memory. So in each of those cases, there was significant disruption, skills were lost, but new capabilities emerged and living standards rose. And it's going to be the same with AI. We will lose some skills. I already feel quite sad about the loss of some skills for me. I think I now find it a lot harder to write in long form, something I used to feel much stronger at. But I also recognise we're gaining so many other skills, and they will equip us for this new age. And the other side of it is I'm really optimistic about the massive productivity gains. And I think this offers an enormous opportunity to improve our quality of life. And if we don't have that opportunity, what's the point of any of it? At the beginning of the 20th century, we were commonly working a 6-day working week. That then, I think around the 1920s, became a 5-day working week. And I think we should be thinking, how can we use AI to move towards a 4-day working week? And just to finish off, I think, as has also been said earlier this evening, I think it's incredibly important to experiment with how you can use AI in your lives and start to get to understand how to use it. It's get stuck in, but the important thing is to retain that critical mind, review outputs, and also retain your personal voice as well, because that can easily be lost using AI. But overall, I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Okay, good. So, questions in the room first, please, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. That was, really fascinating. I kept on thinking about the Ukraine war during it and how the dramatic, complete turning over of all previous strategic thought, conventional weapons wiped out, clever little drones that people do in their back garden sheds, actually just doing incredible things. And I know this wasn't what you were asked, but I'd be interested to know is, where do we stand as the UK compared with other advanced countries? But equally, is it the case that other countries, third world countries, could just absolutely leapfrog over? I mean, what does this mean? Are we, we're not doing this in a vacuum. Your businesses aren't doing this in a vacuum. Where are we compared with other places and other societies?
Anyone want to have a go?
I'll give it a go. I mean, it's a good point. And I think this is a business conversation, but yeah, where are the biggest centres of AI development? Sadly, the Ukraine war and Gaza were the two biggest drivers for AI innovation. Like, where do we stand in an incredibly competitive place? Is why I was trying to make this point about kind of expansion and small to medium-sized businesses and the opportunity for that being a growth engine. And I'm trying to lobby the kind of UK government on this, because you made this point. We've got a service economy, so we've been very good at coming up with services on top of like infrastructure and innovating and doing advertising and a bunch of other stuff. AI allows you to accelerate that really quickly, but it also allows other markets to kind of copy some of the innovative history that we've got. So yes, we're in a competitive race for it. I think on the engineering levels, I think we lost a lot of the engineering war for software quite a long time ago, but then that's why I don't think you necessarily need the coders and the data scientists. It's the people who can think about to bring the net new services and the new ways of generating wealth and income where we've got an opportunity, but it's super competitive. Also remember, we don't own any of this stuff. Like it's all owned in California, pretty much, and that there's definite risk there.
Isobel, anything you comment or that you see?
I would say, in terms of, I agree, a lot of the development is happening in the US, and in terms of developing countries, the resources needed to train some of these models are so enormous that unfortunately only economies with a lot of resource are able to do that. But what I think the opportunity is once you have access to those models, then actually the barrier to innovation is much lower. And that means there's almost a more even playing field when it comes to developing and building things. And hopefully that opens up an opportunity for countries that don't have so many resources or may not have such developed economies to innovate and kind of make progress in that way.
Ryan, anything you'd add? Or?
Yeah, I would agree with Isobel. I think the barriers to entry are lower and will allow a lot more geographic, dispersion in who can do what with the AI. It's services, I think, have always been a bit like that. I think the barrier to entry in services has always been a bit lower, and Britain has always been quite good at this. So it's not like a manufacturing business where there's a huge amount of physical plant and infrastructure that has to be in place. I think if you have access to the models, then you can utilize them, and I think they can be utilized potentially all around the world.
So Matt, I love the demo, by the way. I thought it was very good to see how, I was kind of amazed to see how good it was. I have a more existential question for advertisers. If consumers outsource their decisions to agents,
yes,
why do you need advertising?
Yeah, brilliant. Is the spot on existential question when agent talks to agent, but it's also the future. Right, so I didn't go into this, but you brought it up now. So the business is still going to need to create some differentiation, and they're still going to want to create some value. So we've got products, but you build brands on top of products, so you can charge more for them because they've got additional value. Businesses are still going to want to do that, but then how do you build that value when an agent is talking to an agent? How do you get, emotional connection to it, mental availability, and all the things that actually drive marketing? The answer is I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows, but these are questions that are going to need to be answered, and that's why there will be jobs. and there will be jobs, and hopefully I won't be still around doing it at this point. But that's why you will need people who understand, brands, marketing, to help businesses with those questions. Customer experience, like we do think we map things through websites at the moment. I don't think there'll be websites. So then how do you actually get it? Like it starts to, like, all the kind of constructs and paradigms that we're all used to fall away. And you get this kind of huge feeling of vertigo about, like, how do we communicate anymore? I think that's quite exciting, and that's people will pay to have other people solve those problems. Yeah. Phone a growth partner like WPP to get them solved.
Piggybacking on Elliot's existential question, maybe even more existential, because all three panelists, it made me realize. So I'm a professor in the business school and a fellow here, and so I hear constantly, we do a lot of executive teaching with lawyers and Big Four and whatnot, and they're saying exactly the same thing, which is, how do we price anymore when you're not pricing for people and hours, you're pricing for stuff, and stuff is readily generated, right? And even before it's agent to agent. So all of the optimism is great, and I would like to believe it, and all of the other waves of technology development have brought different forms of skill, and they've replaced manual labor with sort of knowledge work, as we call it. Could this be the first time where we see the opposite, in the sense, how do we price and therefore value work that is agent to agent, AI to AI, et cetera, and I think there's a recency effect. I spent the morning with construction engineering leaders from all over the world, and finished my day with conversation with someone developing small-scale nuclear. 2% of Gen Z wants to take construction jobs. The nuclear people said, what keeps us up at night? We need a workforce. And I'm thinking, okay, no matter how you feel about decarbonized energy and nuclear, you don't build a data center, you don't do any of this stuff without infrastructure. So could we, for the first time, 10 years from now, say, wow, that was a great change, knowledge work went like that, but the value of physical labor came up again? Provocative question.
Isobel, you're nodding.
I think that what we will hopefully see is a shift to tasks that need humans. That could be in those kind of physical jobs, but it's also in areas where human connection is really important. So just because we can automate everything doesn't mean that suddenly we don't want to be able to connect human to human. And thinking to the advertising question, why do you need advertising? I think even behind an agent who might be going off to do your shopping and work out what clothes you're going to wear or whatever it is, there's going to be a person, and that person is going to identify with ideas and brands, etc. And in that sense, like, we have to remember that kind of human element to it. We're not going to exist in a world where there are no humans and then there are all just these agents running around doing things. So I think we'll see a shift both on the towards those kind of tasks where physical human labour is required, but also hopefully greater emphasis in areas where human connection is really important.
Brian, could this be the first time that the previous technological disruption models are inverted?
It could. I mean, it will be different for sure. I mean, I do agree that the so-called blue-collar type work will really benefit from this. I think where the humans are needed in all sorts of for physical reasons and others. I've also been reading things where and as Isobel touched on it, about where collaboration is needed and creativity and etc. And this could be the revenge of the humanities. Is something I've been reading a lot about. Now, of course, as a mathematician, I don't 100% look forward to that. But no, I do think there will be changes. I think in the previous things, the printing press, the loom, etc. There has been a lot of social upheaval. There has been a lot of change, and I don't think anybody's suggesting there won't be any changes here. I just think the net, utility will increase, I think.
I have a question from John Rees online. How do we manage the enormous energy requirements of AI?
Anybody got an answer to that one? None of you are in the energy business.
I mean,
challenging.
it's a problem, yeah, but it's not one I'm qualified to answer.
The only thing I would say on it is lots of organisations do think about the environmental impact of the models they're selecting. And I think the more that happens and the more demand there is for sustainable models and ensuring they've been the resource required to train them is sustainable, I think we'll see innovation in that area.
Yeah, one thing I've seen recently, and I think it's a very good innovation in this area, is rather than relying on the massive models that we've all heard of, which are billions and billions of parameters, more organizations now are looking at their own kind of slimmed down, more kind of domain-specific models, which are a lot lighter on the energy load. So I do think there will be a move in that direction for lots of reasons, because of ethics as well, and sort of proprietary data and so on and so on. So I just think having your own weights, your own model, actually will eventually make sense.
And perhaps more for Isobel, to hear a bit more about the bias in AI that you mentioned.
Yeah, and actually this is probably quite relevant because the research that I did a few years ago was actually gender bias in the outputs of models in relation to marketing and creating kind of advertising scripts. And when I did that research, I basically ran an experiment where I asked various different models to create marketing scripts for various different products. Some of them were products that you would associate with one gender or another. Some of them were things that would, any person, someone of any gender would use. And the outputs were pretty shocking, actually, in terms of the gender bias that was, then the stereotyping that was obvious within that. And things have changed since then, but it's an absolute reflection on the fact that the data used to train a lot of the models that we used is inherently biased, and that it's very easy to overlook that, and therefore it's really important when we're developing AI solutions that we really think about the way that people are represented in the outputs of solutions. We need to make sure the decisions that are being made don't unfairly discriminate against one group over another. And it's easy to overlook that. That always should be something that's central to anything that's created. And to go back to the point of development teams are unfortunately still very non-diverse, and in tech it's quite a significant problem. And it's very common to see tech solutions developed where something that would be very obvious to a group, and probably the easy example is kind of, if you're a woman, there might be certain things in like health apps, for example, that you would expect, but if an all-male development team has developed that, they might not have thought of. So you see these issues with these solutions, and that's where it's really important that there's good representation on the development team and good engagement with lots of different groups to make sure the solutions that are developed do work for everyone.
Thank you, Matt. You wanted to?
Yeah, I think there's a specific and there's a general point I'm going to try and make on that. So you're absolutely right, and the brands that we work with, which is a lot, are hypersensitive to that. So the stuff that comes out, it doesn't run, and lots of the brands that are, they are very acutely aware of the ethical impact of the things that they're putting out. So there may be bias that comes to the model. There is bias when you go to an art director or to a writer. There is bias in humans as well. So we're actually massively strictly regulated in industry. So everybody's kind of very, very aware of that. And most of the brands, so if we're working, for example, with any like beauty brands and so on, they will not have synthetic humans in the ads, or like car brands will not have anything which has got, which cannot be justified and legally pointed and substantiated. But I think there's a common theme here is because we've got the machine, we don't, we talk about human in the loop, we didn't opt out as humans and then all have to go and be plumbers as well. It's like, it should be an empowerment for us to be able to do more and to use the tools to create more things and to govern it and control it. And so it's not, it's not a kind of zero-sum game, basically, where the machine does it, so we stop doing it as people, as the lump and labour fallacy. There is more. The amount of work to do will continue, so it's an enabler for us.
I wanted to ask whether all of you, as you've all said, these technologies are moving fast, and businesses and companies and people, we're sort of running to keep up, and that's exciting, bit bewildering, and so on. But do you see the governance and the regulation and the politicians, and are they ahead? Are they running even further behind? What do you all see?
I would say regulation is running behind, but I think organisations on the whole, and this is one of the reasons it's hard for organisations to progress with AI, are trying to get in place governance and do have quite high risk aversion and want to make sure they're doing the right thing. And actually, I think it's almost that is meaning adoption is slower than it would otherwise be. I think that is probably the biggest reason.
Yeah, the regulation is definitely running behind. Oddly, I would say one area where the UK is probably the best. The AI Security Institute and this regulation. I think it's far from complete, obviously, or it's very much a work in progress. But I do think that the UK is doing a lot of the right things. Now, if the problem with AI, of course, is that you can't just do it on your own. And whether we get the necessary buy-in from our friends in Silicon Valley, who knows? But I think for now, we're doing what we can. I think it's heading in the right direction. But I agree with Isobel as well. And the individual companies are doing probably a lot more than we think on this.
Thank you very much. Brian, so Chris Barmer, I'm the Deputy Chief Constable here in Cambridgeshire, and it's not quite 30 years since I was here. But Brian, I was particularly drawn to your subtitle of why is my IT department panicking? Because among friends, I am having lots of interesting conversations with our IT department. The cost of entry to AI doesn't seem cheap to us, I have to, from where we're sitting, and certainly some of the software that we're being offered. I suppose my question is, historically we were always told that an ICT department should devote a certain amount of its resource, perhaps 80%, to keeping the lights on and the remaining 20% to development. My question is, in an AI world, how does that equation change, and what proportion should they be giving over to supporting citizen development by non-ICT specialists? And in fact, is the new equation, it's a certain percentage for keeping the lights on, and all of the rest goes over to enabling and then putting governance around citizen development?
So I think a lot of effort, a good percentage, will need for most companies to go into enabling employees throughout the organisation to make the most of the tools available, whatever they be in the particular context. I mean, your particular situation, the data is obviously very, very sensitive, right? So that makes it very, very difficult, because what you don't want is a data leak. And you don't want an AI being trained on your data, without you knowing about it and all these things. So a lot of time, in every company will have to be devoted as well to regulation, security, governance. I mean, cybersecurity is a huge issue, and it's only growing with AI. There's a lot of new kind of viruses, bots, etc., are being developed by AI. So it's a constantly changing, evolving, difficult landscape, and you absolutely will need to use AI. There's no doubt. The question is how restrictive your IT department need to be, to monitor that barrier between you and the outside world. And that's very tricky, and it's very tricky in medicine too, where there's health data involved. And there are certain industries where this is really, really tricky. And there's no simple answer.
Hello, I'm a student here, and I was listening to all of the outsourcing and optimization talk, but recently there was a McKinsey report published on ROI Zero and how only 1% of businesses found AI optimization tools useful, and most businesses reported that there was a very big bloating of the administrative workload. And I was wondering, how would you say the factors that we have discussed, including obviously ethical data collection, representation sets, and bias intersect with this, and what are the biggest challenges that businesses, the middle-level businesses we want to see prosper in the UK, are facing with this statistic in mind?
Anyone want to have a go at that?
Yeah, there was quite a lot there.
Yeah, there is. It's maybe not always as efficient as everybody, has been saying.
I think massively underreports it. I think it depends what you... So it's a big topic, and we need to separate it from different layers. And I don't mean to diminish the kind of the ethical and the privacy and the infosec aspects to it. But the majority of what businesses do that isn't affected by that, and the efficiency gains can be absolutely enormous and can be leveraged very quickly, and for actually not very much money. I think giving somebody a kind of an enterprise ChatGPT license for £10 a month per person can make some really, really substantial gains for most knowledge kind of worker tasks of things. The biggest barrier for that is adoption. It's people actually doing it. The amount of, I don't know, someone should do a graph of the proportion of time spent talking about AI versus time using AI, and this is why I get the clients going, when I'm trying to flog them that platform thing, going, we can sit there and we can analyse this with you for another 3 months and do meetings and write PowerPoints, or we could just use it for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And if you use it for a couple of days, you can go, actually, it wasn't for us, and you can walk away. But you won't, and so just forcing people to get hands-on and just over that barrier. I was at a 60th wedding anniversary, my in-law's 60th wedding anniversary. So my wife's over there dying with the embarrassment of this story now. But I was chatting to a guy there who was in his 80s, was a film director, and I hope he took on this. He was like, AI is going to kill us all. It's going to kill all the jobs. It's going to eat the babies and all the rest of it. I was saying, have you used it? It's like, no, I wouldn't. It's like, well, what was the film you never made in your career? Go tomorrow, go and write the pitch to get the money for it and try and storyboard it and try and make the film, and then come back when you've done it. Because once people get hands-on and start using it, oh my God, this is, I kind of get it now. So our big thing is spend a couple of hours doing it, start using it, and then think about your next challenge. If we could get more people doing that, we'd get the economic growth, we'd get the drive, but it's hard.
Yeah, there's so much information in business and manufacturing. Technology is confidential for many, many years. The AI will not be able to feed on that for ages. So therefore, the impact of AI will be diminished over those period of time, when it has great potential to have a lot more information available faster.
I can definitely talk about that. Obviously, there's lots of information that is private to an organisation, and therefore a publicly trained model is not going to have access to that. But there are lots of techniques that we use so that we can take a publicly trained model, often hosted in a very secure way, so that we know that the data isn't being sent off to the US and it's being kept where we want it to be, and there are safeguards around it. And then we have ways of then retrieving the information that is relevant to whatever the prompt is or whatever use case we're handling, and we provide that proprietary information alongside whatever prompt that's going or whatever system we're building, so the model actually has access. You can still use the publicly trained model, but you're able to have a response that is tailored to your data. So and there are various different techniques you can use to do that. So that's how most organisations address that problem.
Jane Nicholson, 30 years, you're doing well. My career has been in the language professions, language services, editing, translation, interpretation. Leaders in AI, generative neural machine translation, but also now heavily impacted. And so to come back to your point, Matt, about it was a pretty good translation. In the areas of diplomatic, political, institutional translation, that's not good enough. And yet, staff are already being let go. So my question for you in your areas is, what are you doing about ensuring that you've got the checking, revising, reviewing capacity being built, coming through the universities, coming from wherever? Certainly in the language services, the language professions, it takes a long time in technical translation to get up to the level of expertise you need to check this output. You cannot cut corners on the expertise of the output, and you cannot feed it back into the language models or whatever is going to be used in the future without deterioration in your long-term quality. So what are you seeing, and what do you see as the role of schools, which, where we know that it's certainly in the language professions, there's a diminution in interest, in the humanities and so on. What's happening in your areas, thinking about the future of how are you going to check this output?
And preserve quality, yeah. Matt?
It's really tough on languages, because you're right, it isn't going to be as good as somebody who's trained in it, but it's a value equation. So we can do that kind of thing where we can translate and add copy line, and to your point, what do we charge for it? We charge about 80 cents for that. for that translation. If we put that to a translation bureau, that's going to cost us, what, $400-500 for the same piece of work. So does it matter? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's worth the $400. A lot of the time, the 80 cents will do on it. In terms of governance, so yes, you've always got human in the loop checking. Increasingly, we're writing agents. Agent verification is a big thing. Agents that check other agents, basically. I think the quality. I used to work a lot with Mercedes-Benz, so very, very highly technical explanation of a very, very premium product using AI for localization of the manuals and the technical documentation. It's definitely, translation is an industry that is under a lot of pressure because of the value equation.
Yeah. What are the LLM AI companies working on now for launch 5 years out?
You've already got anyone even a year out.
They probably don't know themselves. I mean, 5 years is an eternity.
Yeah. I wanted to ask actually, because each of you obviously use, whether personally and in business, which tools do you actually use? I mean, without all be turning into advertising, companies for different. Because we've had ChatGPT, but I don't know. What are you actually using? Which do you?
I think on a personal level, I would use some combination at work of Copilot. I do lots of technical workflow coding, so we use things like GitHub Copilot, Claude Code as well. ChatGPT, often there's like a preferred tool depending on what you're doing. If it's something sensitive, I'll use a kind of work ring fence tool. If it's a more general question, sometimes I find a Claude or ChatGPT will give me a better answer.
Brian, what about you?
Very similar actually, because a lot of my work is coding and mathematics, and it's, I would say, virtually the same cast of characters,
Matt, the same? Or?
Yeah, so we use it in environments. We have, as well as the thing that I showed, we have an internal one, so we've got access to all the LLMs within our environment. To your point, the data can't leak out, so we can have sensitive data in there. It doesn't go out. Claude for writing is great. ChatGPT general, image, Nano Banana Pro is far and away the best. Video, there's nothing, I don't really like any of the video. VO 3.1 is probably, so the different things for different tasks. I think generally speaking, like for the general stuff, I think Google are doing really well. And I think when Gemini comes onto the iPhone, that will be another big shift, and we'll see a big change, because then it will be much more about personal AI.
First of all, Paul Smith, TRP Research. First of all, I'd like to completely echo what the lady over there said about language services and translation, because I've seen this from a personal perspective. Couldn't agree more with what she said there. Secondly, in working in a related industry to Matt's, and I'm wondering about the effect that AI, and you just mentioned Nano Banana video editing tools, has on creatives themselves, people who make a living out of, for example, as it might be, acting or singing or teaching, and the legal framework about the rights of people over their own images and their own voices. Because once that goes into an AI, and once you have a model that has them speaking about, say, 50, 100, 150 words, you can make them say anything.
Okay.
How do people keep the rights, especially people who make a living out of creativity, keep
good question.
rights over their own image and their own art?
We'll just take the question here, and then I'll ask the panel to... Thank you.
Thank you. If you think of a business in a bubble, and you've got your business inside the bubble and the rest of the universe outside the bubble, the boundary, what you do and what you don't do, moves when things like AI come along. And yet it's very difficult as a business person to ever imagine that boundary moving. You think about your own efficiency and you think about that kind of thing, but you don't often think about how that boundary could either expand, because you can do more, maybe you do think that with expansion, but you really very rarely think of it as contracting, because the AI is in the universe and your clients are using it as well as you are. So I'm wondering if any of you have given much thought yet to where that boundary is going to change for your business and what you think you might be doing in the future that you're not doing now, and the opposite, what you are not going to be doing in the future that you are doing now?
So, two different questions about creativity and the individual human, and then about boundaries.
Well,
of
I'd say the
businesses.
creativity one in the creative
you do that
industry.
one. That'd be great.
It's really tough. It's a bit like translation. This is not going to be a popular answer, but I think it's almost impossible to defend. So, and I think trying to do that, I mean, there's legislation in the States, there's the SAG law, which means that you can't, you have to pay rights on AI voices. It's just making them massively uncompetitive. So I think it's really, really hard, and I think it's a problem we haven't got the answer to. How do you monetize your IP in that area? Really, really difficult.
Thank you. Boundaries of your business, Brian, or Isobel?
So from my point of view, so I think up till like fairly recently, a huge amount of my role would be around technical development and coding, etc. Already I'm seeing that's changing massively, and over time I expect to see things change such that I'm much less involved in the technical development. I think there'll be far fewer people involved in that like technical development process, and instead I think this kind of leans into one of the points that Matt made, that we'll need to be shifting over to the areas where human creativity and human insights into the ways that organisations are working and the benefits that we can bring. That's where I expect my kind of role to expand a lot more. So human creative areas where there's much more human creativity required, where there's human connection needed, and much less time on the actual technical development of things, which in some senses is I love the human side, but I also love the technical side. So there is even like sadness for me in that. But I think it's it's acceptance that is the way that things are moving.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, I will be doing less and less of the technical stuff, the bit I like. I'm not a big fan of humans generally, but I think business development will become more of the what I have to do is sort of figuring out what's next and supervising the AI, telling it, asking to do things, and then obviously reviewing what it does and trying to figure out what's next, where to go next, what customers need before customers themselves figures it out, I guess.
Can I just make a small point? Yeah. Because I'm building on your point. I think that, and also Tony, you get a bit negative about AI, all the things we lost, but it's quite a lot of fun working with, and it can be a liberation. And so I think look to all the things that we are going to be able to do that we couldn't do before, and what that does for individuals as a business, the unlock of creativity. Like I can't draw and I can't make music, but I can now. So that there's a lot of positive things that come out of that, and focus on those bits that we do moving forward. We'll be able to, rather than some of the things that have will have drifted away.
Thank you all very, very much indeed. Thank you all for the questions and the questions online. I think it's been really a wonderful marriage of quite detailed thinking, but also lots of big ideas, and really encouraging us all to be flexible as we face an exciting and sometimes bewildering future. So please, let's thank our panel.